You know how to hold it all together, but when it comes to your relationships, something's always missing. Welcome to Emotionally Wealthy, a podcast for high achievers who are ready to trade emotional disconnection for clarity, fulfillment, and relationships that are nourishing, not draining. I'm your host, Karen Conlon, licensed therapist, transformational coach, and your guide in turning insight into action. Are you ready for it? Let's do this. Welcome, everyone, once again to the Emotionally Wealthy podcast. Today is our special edition, Couples Corner. And so I am joined by my favorite co-host, the Hubs.
Your only
Otherwise,
co-host.
well, yeah, that's true. It's
That's all right.
my
I'll
only
take
one.
it.
Yeah, just take it. Anyway, Jonathan Conlon. Welcome, Jonathan. I'm so glad you're here to do another one of these.
Honey,
The first one was so fun.
it was.
Yeah. Well, we are going to be discussing the role of parenting and the kind of stuff that nobody ever told you. I mean, I'm talking about identity shifts, how you see yourself as a parent, as an individual, what you gain, what you lose. My goodness. I mean, there's just so many variables. And of course, we're going to be coming at it from our own personal experience, and everybody's experience is very different. That being said, I think that you are going to find some similarities or familiarities if you have become a parent. We are a parent to one girl, and she is a teenager. She's actually a really good kid.
Yeah.
But that being said, we, I think, went through a lot of iterations of ourselves throughout
Yep.
this relationship. And I don't know, one of the things that I was thinking we could start with is maybe talking to everybody about what our expectations were, if we had any, about
Yeah.
becoming a parent.
Well, and what's interesting is that, we had, one could say, and I think by the end of this podcast, that people will see, oh, we shifted around quite a bit,
Yeah.
maybe more than the average bear. Usually, I think parents have, a pretty set idea of what their defined roles are going to be when they do get pregnant, expectations, etc. We kind of went on a little bit of a roller coaster. I love children, you love kids. It was not the easiest for us to get pregnant, but we were very fortunate, let's say, when we found out. And uh I was, you know to the moon, very
Yeah.
excited, and very excited to have a daughter, because, as you know, I always wanted to have a sister when I was growing up.
Yeah.
We'll go into that on another podcast. But, the idea of having a daughter was not that I would have been disappointed with a son or anything like that, but
You were so excited,
I
though.
was very excited. But it was, uh, I think, equal parts excited, anxious, nervous, all of the emotions.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's, you hear it all the time when people talk about becoming a parent, and especially when parents are talking to people that are expecting their first and such. And it's like, your whole life's going to change. Your whole perspective on things is going to change to a significant degree,
Yeah.
your priorities, etc. And that's absolutely true. And it gets annoying to say it maybe over and over again, and people to hear it over and over again, but it is absolutely true. And it's not something you can really understand until you go through it.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that surprised me the most about us as a
Mhm.
collective was actually how easily we slipped into parenthood. I think that, I mean, obviously, both of us were really excited. We wanted to have a family. And I was very involved in raising my brothers, even though there's only a 5-year
You
difference
came with a
between.
lot of built-in.
I
Which
did
was
come,
great.
right? I mean, diaper rashes and teething and all that stuff. I was actually very surprised at how calm I was about most things. And I was also, I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised at how you took into fatherhood very easily. It just was like a very natural thing. And I think that actually surprised me only because with me, I had so much experience with my
Yeah.
two younger brothers, but you hadn't.
You know, liking kids and like having fun with kids and, whatever. Like that's one thing. Being a parent is like a different category. But we've talked about this many times. The fact of you being parentified as a child, especially with your younger brothers, I think prepared you, which, listen, I would say helped me be more confident and comfortable because I knew that
Mm.
I had you as a partner to rely on,
Yeah,
versus not in it by myself.
but that's so interesting because I I mean, I never felt that you were leaning on me in that way. Like, in other words, I never felt that pressure. So that's news to me, which is good news, actually. We do have in front of us some questions that we have either come across with through other podcasts or through like conversations with friends or even that we've had ourselves. So I'm gonna refer to these questions because I think that they're really, really good. And I guess we can just kind of go through them. And one of the questions that came up was what changed between us almost immediately after becoming parents?
We were you ended up having a C-section, so you couldn't do a lot of things coming
Yeah.
out of the gates. So, I was doing a lot of the nighttime
Yeah.
feedings and stuff and getting up and moving around and letting you rest. We weren't letting you, like, lift and move around and stuff just because you were still healing. But we were very fortunate where she started sleeping through the night, 6 hours by the time she was 6 weeks old, which is.
Can we talk about that for a second? How, because we can actually now say
Yeah, we
it
can say it
because
out loud. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
when we first would tell people, so this is another thing. If you haven't yet had kids, it is a touchy subject. We did not know that it was a touchy subject. And so when people would ask us, "Are kids sleeping like, I don't know,
6 hours at 6
6
weeks.
hours?"
That's
I
how
think
I
it was
remember
5 or
it.
6 weeks. Yeah.
I need little tricks like that in order to remember things.
Yeah,
I
yeah. I
remember
was like,
6 hours by 6 weeks, she was sleeping in the night, which is it
"Okay."
may not sound like a lot, but
Yeah.
it is, like, that is fantastic,
Yeah.
you know?
But we didn't know that. And so when other new parents would ask us about this and we
Yeah,
would say that, we got all kinds of awful
yeah.
looks. Like we got
Well,
shade. I got called a liar one time. I was like, why? What's happening? Like,
you're like,
why is
"That
there
can't
so
be
much?
true."
Yeah, like that can't be true. Why?
You're just saying that because you want your kid to come off like a
No,
great kid, and it has nothing to it's just we were lucky. It's
just
not
so much
like
hostility.
it was a lot of hostility, but we learned very quickly,
Yeah.
like, you have people that go
Yeah.
a year before their kid
It's
gets to that
awful. It's
age,
really
that
awful.
sleeping schedule. So, and a lot of it's not just how you're holding the kid or what you're
No,
like. A lot of it is
no.
just nature, like whether they're colicky or whether they're, So, we were just very, very fortunate, and
Yeah, we
to this
did.
day, I am very happy about that.
Yeah, I know. We were fortunate, but
Universally,
yeah, but all that to say that if you are a parent that's struggling with a newborn and they're not sleeping well, and so you're not sleeping well, it will absolutely impact your relationship, your mood. I mean, there's just so much. If you can seek out support, seek out strategies, maybe from your pediatrician. And what was really helpful for me was going to mom's group. I actually joined a mom's group that I met through Meetup, and we would meet every 2 weeks and alternate houses where we would meet and have little, baby play dates or whatever. But it was a really nice support system. And we would exchange a lot of tips about all these different things. And then we also were able to lean on each other. So if you're able to find community to support you, please do, because sleep deprivation, no kidding aside, when you have a baby and, all the changes that come, I mean, your personality changes even
hmm
because you're so irritable
yeah,
and lacking sleep. So
it's not for the faint of heart when you get into sleep deprivation, and it can really test relationships. Now, we've
yeah,
had
oh
other
my
tests
gosh.
as we'll talk about, but that one in particular, we were able to get around because our daughter cooperated with us in terms of sleeping and such. So, and that leads us to our first sort of shift is where, when we first had our daughter, the intent is you're a professional working person,
Mm,
you've always been in demanding jobs and very professional minded and aimed in terms of career oriented, etc. And the initial thought was, what were you going to do when we first?
Well, I had it all planned out, and it
Hmm.
was a perfect plan
Yes.
where I was gonna have my baby, and then I was gonna take my leave for a couple of months, and then I was gonna go back to work,
Hmm.
and we're gonna have an amazing, sitter or nanny or whatever, and help from family, and it was just gonna be perfect. I was going back to work, and, yeah, everything was gonna be perfectly balanced.
Sure.
And
And
then
what actually happened?
reality hit. And that reality was that I did that. I went back to work for a month and I came home one day just like crying, like, we need to talk.
Yeah.
I I really want to be home with her. It
So
was
so
it
when
was
did you
hard.
when did that is that were you fighting to go back to work from the moment you saw our daughter, or was it something that came about when you actually physically went back to
Uh,
work? Was it actually when you made the leap and commuted into the office for that first day? How did that come
that's
about?
actually that's such a great question. Actually,
Actually don't know the answer
No,
to
you
it.
don't
So
know. No, 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 this is good, this is good. Well, I was very happy being pregnant. I couldn't wait to meet our little one, and then when I held her, I thought of everything but work. Work was not one of the things that I thought of. I really just wanted to be with her. I had a very strong maternal instinct that kicked in way
mhm,
before she came along.
came
It's
with the nest.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, what happened with me was that at around month 2, I started to feel anxious. I started to
Mm,
feel anxious about, my responsibilities at work and the expectations. I worked with, men at the time. Also, it was like a group of men. I was the only woman in the group, and as much as they were great and very, very supportive, I did feel this sort of underlying pressure of, but yeah, but they don't understand. They won't understand. And I just started to think about all these other responsibilities that I had taken on and that I had promised to do, like these other roles. But I was so torn because I I was enjoying motherhood so much. I was enjoying watching her grow and watching her change every day. And this early stage of motherhood gave me this ability to give all this love that I had and nurturing in a different way than, in a relationship with you or with a family member or a friend. It was just something so different. And I just wanted to be there and be her mom. But I started to then struggle with the thought of, yeah, but you're also expected to be in the office. You're also a professional. You're also all these things. But about a month in, I remember one time my mom visited me and she said to me, well, she's sleeping a lot now. This might be the perfect time for you to, maybe start a business or something. I mean, if you don't want to go back to the office, you this is the perfect time. I'm like, what time? What do you mean? What time? What
All
time is
that
the
free
perfect?
time. What are
All
you
this
talking
free
about?
time when,
Yeah.
the hour and a half that the baby's sleeping. I'm sure she didn't understand what she was saying to me. She was just making what she thought was an innocent comment that was helpful. But what it actually did was trigger this really deep sense of, oh my God, I should not be enjoying this so much. I have other things to do.
Yeah. Well, and rewinding the clock to back then was before you did a lot of work to break through some of those models that you were
Yeah.
still, or expectations that were still there and such, which we all struggle with, from whether it's from a parent, whether they're self-imposed, of struggling with your identity,
Yeah.
like, well, who am I if I'm not working, is so commonplace, I think, in America, period, is people identify so heavily, especially when you get to high achievers, with their identity is so ingrained or wrapped around what they do for a living, what their
Yeah.
work is. So, listen, I said it before, I'll say it again. I don't envy a mother's role when it comes to your identity around that, especially for professionally, like, career oriented sort of woman that then decides to also have a family, like, in that conflict. And it was very clear my role was always very sort of defined. So we continued down that path of getting a nanny, and you going back to work, and that lasted all of about 30 days. I'm sure it was a little less, a little bit more, but I always equate it to
It was about 30 days.
about 30 days.
Hmm.
And there were some issues with our nanny. There was some other things there and such, but really, it was like, I think that was sort of like an easy out for you to be like, you know what, we're gonna have to, like, shake things up a little
Yeah,
bit
like I
here,
needed an
and
excuse. It wasn't just enough to be like, I really want to stay home with my baby. Hey,
yeah,
mom, can we do it? Can we talk about finances to see what we could do? No,
yeah,
it was like I had to have a life or death
yeah,
reason
yeah,
for me to want to, to justify, not want to, but like to justify staying home.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a few discussions, and it was me reassuring you that, like, it kept me in the same role.
Yeah.
It was, and it also, it further reinforced my role as the one to go out and work and make money so we could pay expenses. But it also, it helped me tremendously, just from the aspect of, like, who would I rather have with our child
Mhm.
24/7 other than so that it was a very easy shift for me at that time, because I wasn't really shifting other than more into work, where I could really focus as I was building my business, and needing to really dedicate a tremendous amount of time and energy into it. And it alleviated and took that pressure off my shoulders of, like, oh, but I need to get home because I have to relieve the nanny or whatever. It allowed me to really lean into work. And then still, of course, the pressure is always, when you have a child, for me, the pressure is always there to spend time with them. Obviously, and I love being a father. I love it's what I live for at this point in my life. From the day one when I saw her, I was like, okay, now I have a reason to live. Like, and it's so, like,
Yeah.
prominent in my emotional spectrum of, like, priorities in life and
Yeah.
such. So, but from that perspective, it was an easy shift for me. And we, as much as we talked about it, I know how hard that was for you, because
I
there's been
struggled.
glimpses of that throughout our parenthood,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
we'll get to. But that was the first major one, which, frankly, now looking back at it, knowing everything that I know that you've done in your work to get around hurdles and expectations and identity and stuff, like, looking back at it now, even more applaud you for, like, standing up for that,
Mm.
and like,
Yeah.
making that shift, because it certainly was not easy for you, especially where you were at in your life at that moment in time.
Yeah, thank you for saying that because it was, I mean, you were firsthand witness to how much of a struggle that was. I mean, I had a lot of identity around, so my self-worth was tied to bringing in money, being a provider as well. I mean, there was there was just so much of that tied into my identity that even though being a mother, it came as such a like just like the most natural thing for me. It was almost like my cognition was fighting with my instinct. That's the only way that I can describe it. And to your point, the other thing too that I think is very, it's a difficult thing to deal with is like time. So speaking of about that, I know that that's one thing that you always had on your mind a lot is working and then making time.
Mhm.
I want to make sure that I make time and not just time, like you wanted quality time. And I think for me, it was the same, but a little bit different because it didn't matter how much time I gave. I never felt like it was enough.
We talked about this very recently with your conversation with a daughter. I think you always struggle with that. And I think that's an indicator that you care. And it's an indicator that you want your child to not feel any sort of neglect or like you chose something over them. And I struggle with that mainly because of working as much as I have, especially at that point in my life. That's when I instituted like Saturdays is, you know,
Hmm.
family day. I'm not taking any appointments on Saturday. And I held true to that probably 99% of
Yeah.
the time. Like
Yeah. You're
there
really
was
good
a
with that.
couple instances that maybe, but I was like one day a week, I have to have clear dedicated time
Yeah.
because I was working from early till, late most days. And the nice thing about a baby is that when they're young is that they're not quite on a sleep schedule, so you can kind of squeeze in your moments with them when
Yeah.
they're still waking up. So I still feel like I got a lot of baby time, but that was the first transition was when we you decided to stay home.
Later, I decided to go back to school because I decided that I had done we had done some therapy ourselves. I had done some individual therapy. I was just so in awe and grateful for uh, what I had gotten out of therapy. I decided that I wanted to go back to school into therapy. And well, here's another thing that people don't really tell you is that when you or your partner, and I'd like to talk about this too, because this is, I think, very relevant, is when you and your partner are chasing a dream or maybe growing a business, because we both went through those things as well, you know, could plan as much as you want, but when you're actually doing it, it's really different. I want to share my experience and I'd love to also then for you to share with me too what your experience was. But I remember that when you were growing your business, there was a point where you and your business partner joined with another business partner years back. We talked about it, we prepared for it. I knew you were going to be busy working. I just did not really expect that it was going to be so much. I didn't expect that you were going to be so busy because that's what needed to happen as you were growing this business and bringing another partner along and all this good stuff. I didn't expect that I was going to spend so much time alone, even though you were in the house, right? But you were in the house, but working in the office. And so I tried to fill my time a lot, visiting, like our neighbors. And I had, of course, the baby. And so, we had other parent friends or whatever. But I remember that it didn't matter how much we talked about it when we were actually in it. There were so many times where I felt like super lonely, but I didn't feel like I could complain about it because you were doing something for us, for the family, all those things like
Mhm.
conflicting feelings. And I think that's one of the things that I think most of us struggle with is having conflicting feelings, right? Like on the one hand, being incredibly proud of you and happy and looking forward to this. And at the same time, feeling sad that I don't have you around as much, that you're not as present, and that this is something that you just need to do. So just kind of like having all of those feelings that don't always feel like they should go together, but you're like kind of feeling those things at the same time. And it didn't matter how much we plan for it, you don't expect it.
Yeah, and I think as you go through the different stages. Listen, when you're running your own business, there's a different level of commitment and pull that I've always struggled with.
Mm.
You know, it's I don't, maybe it's just me. And when you own a business, when you're building a business, it never shuts off.
Yeah.
So you have to make a conscious effort to shut it off. And it's still, that is something that I've always struggled with. I mean, we talk about when we go on vacation, and it's like it would actually help me relax to stay somewhat engaged in the business so that I'm not anxious about what's going on, so at least I can watch it.
Yeah.
Um, so it definitely was a challenge, and that, um, it's sort of, I feel like it's ebbed and flowed over our marriage and our us being parents, but I think, I mean, we were only married for a short period of time before we became parents, but I feel like that sort of is a little bit, that's an accelerant when you have a child as well, because of the additional pressures that come with the necessity of logistics and having to do this and do that, all these new things that you're like, I just want to break,
Yeah.
And I remember getting home and you just be like, okay, like I need, I feel like we navigated that pretty well, but it certainly was always, to me, it always felt like an ebb and flow, like as the business commanded more
Yeah.
time with me physically or mentally being there, focusing on that. Um,
But I think also over the years, having gone through that and having, like you said, gone through ebbs and flows, what I find, I think, comforting is that even now, when you are going through some kind of growth spurt with business or whatever, um, we have really done some clarification of roles. I think that was a
mhm.
really big thing.
But really only, you know, more recently,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, but it's also organic. It's organically kind of had to happen over the years, but the
yeah,
actual conversation
yeah,
about, okay, what are we actually doing here, didn't happen until
yeah,
probably a couple of years ago. Like,
yeah,
folks, we are almost 20 years in. So
yeah,
hopefully you're getting this earlier in your
yeah.
relationship. So, do you have this
Well,
conversation earlier?
it comes down to the work that we've done together and like stepping up our communications
Yeah, yeah,
and like being able to identify our feelings about things and get ahead of them and such. And I think we've gotten much better as time has gone on. Because there absolutely were those moments where it was like, well, I'm doing this, and like it wasn't as structured as it needed to be and
yeah.
communicated as much as it needed to be, because okay, this is the role, but what does that really mean? And I think that we've gotten much better over time with the work that we've done together, and it's not perfect. No person is infallible, but it's definitely, the occurrence of miscommunications has gone down significantly. Maybe it's still not ideal, like in terms of responsibilities that typically fall on, that are now like delegated more to you because of the dynamic we have now. You're like, no, I can't do that. And you just kind of have to deal with it. That's how I feel, anyways, is that, which isn't, i- it's hard for me because I'm a people pleaser, as you know. It gives me no pleasure in saying no.
Right. But I think it's good practice for you because it's important, and also it's what makes it work. Because if you were constantly trying to please me and make it work, then it actually wouldn't work. And we've been through iterations of that
Well,
too,
yeah, and
where it
going
hasn't
back to
worked.
when you went decided to go back to school, that people pleasing in me was so ramped up that I think that's one of the elements. We just didn't communicate enough about it. And that caused some real
Yeah.
tumultuous times between us, because it was like this, like we were at odds at certain points. And in terms of like, well, you had a paper you had to write, or you had a test coming up, or you had to spend time researching whatever, like as you were going through school and a demanding program. it was very intense. And you know, I was not thinking myself like, well, what does this mean for me as like, how is this going to impact family dinner? And it's just a lack of communication at the time. And
But
listen,
can I ask you something though?
yeah,
Because you are the eternal optimist,
I know.
and I would like for you to just be honest about that moment in time because that was a really hard time in our lives.
Hmm.
Again, it was one of those times where we talked about it, and I was like, "Okay, you know what this means? I mean, I'm gonna be really busy." And you're like, "Yeah, no," and you just wanted to be so supportive. I was a little bit afraid that you were underestimating the amount of time and work and
Oh, 100% I was
that was
underestimating
gonna
it.
to
A
do
hundred
a master's
percent.
program.
Yeah. I
And
and especially with somebody that is like a perfectionist, high
you can
achiever
say it.
type.
it's a
I know you're
lifelong
accepting
work.
it now.
I've accepted it.
But, like, you don't do anything lightly. You put your all into it, and it's like, it's all gonna be, like, I'm gonna focus on it, and I'm gonna excel at it, to the best of my ability. So, yeah, I absolutely underestimate, "Oh, she'll go to school, during the day, and then we'll have our nights," and I mean, I can't it's hard for me to rewind the clock and think about what, my thoughts were, but I'll flip that question to you, like, when you decided to jump in, did
No,
you
wait a
know
minute, wait a minute. You're not flipping
what?
a question. We're talking feelings here.
I
All right,
just
my friend.
I just told you, I
Yeah,
totally underestimated it.
yeah, no, but that's a thought. Okay. I want to know how you felt because I know
Mhm.
one of the things that you've struggled with over the years is sharing negative feelings or feelings that you feel maybe will be disappointing or whatever. So I'm going to challenge you right now to just be honest about what was going on for you when you started to realize that, oh no, she's not really going to be around for dinner all the time. And, she's not as present because I really was not as present.
Yeah.
I was constantly writing papers or researching or reading. Um, I mean, like you were feeling it.
Yes, I
And I could tell, and I would actually try to get you to talk, and you're like, no, it's fine. So here's your chance.
just say it. Say it, I dare you. No, I think because I was so perhaps unprepared for what the work was, well, like what the schooling was going to entail, and not as understanding of your perfectionist tendencies and
Mm,
your how much you were going to put into it. Because I think of my schooling and I'm like, yeah, I mean, go to class, take some tests, like that was my college experience.
yeah, because you didn't have to study. You got an A. You
There-
got A's without
there-
studying. I mean,
B's, but no, but that's the I so it was not understanding that, like, and it was not fully understanding you at that moment in time as
mm,
to what to expect. And so I would say I was equally like frustrated. There was frustration there with like, well, okay, I didn't really sign on for this, but it also is also a point of pride that you put so much into it, and and that you excelled so much at it and that you were enjoying it. So it was a real like tug of war in my head between like, well, yeah, but I want you to do this, but I'm so proud of you that you're enjoying it. Because one of the things I've always told you is that like, I don't care what you do. I just want you to be happy, right? Like I want you to find that thing that keeps you happy, that keeps you engaged and keeps you going. But was there some, I don't really want to label it like resentment. It was more, I was taken off guard. And was there some sort of some disappointment in there where when I came to the realization that our lives were significantly changing, our not really the balance, because you still took the brunt of being with our daughter, and you balanced it. I now looking back at it, because I haven't really thought about it as of late, but looking back, you balanced it really well.
I didn't think I was doing a great job.
Yeah, I think you beat yourself up more, but than you need to. I think any person, man or woman, mother or father, in that role would feel exactly like you feel, because it's really hard to do your master's program, excel at it, and have a toddler at home.
But for you, it was hard to what?
Needing to balance a little bit more with work and such, which then made me a little bit like blaming that on you,
So
you know?
resentful? Is that
Yeah, but I don't
you
want to
can
blame
say
it.
it.
That sounds like such a bad word.
It's okay.
But sure, a little resentment because I didn't understand what we were getting ourselves into.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what we were getting ourselves into, pushing you to do it and
Mhm.
to support you in that. And that's, listen, I think we learned a lot through it. I think it was the first real test of our marriage, frankly, and what our roles meant, and who needed to do what, and figure it, like, work through it. And did we get through it perfectly? No. Um, but I do think that it made us stronger and we learned through it, you know?
I agree. I think, all of the challenges that we've had, we, we tried really hard to work through things, some more successfully than others. But that was a really hard time. And now kind of like shifting gears, I'm thinking about her through that period of time and then growing up a little bit more. I'm thinking about when she then goes into middle school and the cliques and the friends and the things start kind of coming up, and she wasn't very clicky. She just kind of had like a big group of friends, but the drama starts, start hearing about this one and that one, and this one was mean and blah blah blah. And so then I think we started to have conversations with her around, conflict resolution, and sometimes when friends were at odds with each other, and she was in the middle, like friends with kind of everybody, not so different than sometimes what happens even now in high school. Um, I'm, I'm just thinking about our communication styles. Do you think that we communicate with her the way that we communicate with each other? Do you know what I mean? Like, do we, um, do we have the same type of, um, I don't know, curiosity and openness and have that open door policy? I mean, I think that we do, but we haven't ever really discussed that.
And I talk to parents, and especially when they have children that are maybe a little bit younger, and especially daughters that are a little bit younger than our daughter, because you always hear about teenagers that like disappear, especially teenage girls for whatever reason. It's just coming from parents of teenage girls where they like disappear for a couple years and then they reappear and they're great.
Yeah.
Like
They go into their
they
rooms
go into their
for
rooms.
two
Yeah.
years.
And I'll always say, well, listen, our daughter still talks to us. She confides in us when she feels like she wants to. And that open line of communication with her is still there and so important to both of us.
Yeah.
It's hard because you want to force that on
Oh my
them
God,
to
you
some
just want them
degree.
to talk.
Like, just
Just talk
give
to me.
me all the
That's it. Tell
tea.
me all of it. Tell me all
Yeah.
of it. But
But to let it naturally happen is hard,
I mean, to let them naturally just be who they are. Let's just be
Yeah.
real. Like that's hard because, I don't
Well,
know, you want to
yeah.
protect them.
Like, you have that moment where you're like, um,
Right.
I don't know about that. You have to like think about and like rein yourself in a little bit. Like, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Watching her have those moments of autonomy and just being herself. And oh man, it's scary. It's great on the one hand, but it's also really scary because you know that they're going to make mistakes. You know that they're going to get their heart broken. By either, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a friend, you know that these things are going to happen
Yeah.
and you
They're
just
all
want
coming
to,
down the pike.
yeah. And then like you try to have these conversations and then you have, of course, a parenting failure where, the conversations don't go exactly the way that you want them
Yeah.
to. Um, the things that I learned when I was being raised and the things that I learned about myself as a result of, and I've been very conscientious about trying to, um, I don't know, trying to share or give her the things that I feel are good and that are going to be valuable and helpful to her, uh, as I let her become her own person and let her teach me who she is,
Hmm.
while also at the same time trying to guide her and give her some guardrails because she's
And
still a kiddo,
and
right?
especially in a way that she will receive it.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the tricky part is
Yeah,
like, how do we say this so that it lands the right way, the intended way, which is we're there to support and give you guidance. That's training for when they get to teenage years when you have to figure out how do I navigate a conversation where I'm not just speaking at them, I'm
hmm,
speaking to them and she'll hear it for what it's worth, like take guidance and like just know that it's coming from a good place. And that's I think one of the trickiest things about being a parent
yeah,
to a child that gets into those teen years is how do you still relate to them, because there's, especially nowadays, between our generation and the digital generation that is now, like there is pluses and minuses to it in many different regards, but how do you have that communication where it lands the way that it's intended?
yeah.
And they
Because you
see it.
can't control that, right? Like, I mean, we say that with everybody. It's just like with your kid is no different. You can say things as nicely, as gently, as diplomatically, as whatever, as strongly.
Yeah,
You cannot control how the other person is going to receive it.
yeah. Uh, I'll relate it to my business. When you're emailing back and forth with a colleague or a
Hmm,
client or something, and you're writing it in one way and they're reading it in a different way. And
hmm,
that tone, because you can't put in an email the tone that you want it to be said, the inflections, et
yeah.
cetera. And you got to pick up the phone, you got to call, you got to talk to them. It's like the same with like a dealing with a teenager, which is where you like, you got to figure out how to speak the language and you have to do it like it's a different combination, of course. It's not just talking to them, but it's different than talking to a colleague or
It's like
something.
going to
Like
the Matrix.
it's yeah, it's challenging. It is challenging, but you do it enough and you reinforce, because we may not have been consistent every single time, but
Mhm.
there is a thread of consistency talking to her, and the angle that we take from, like when we're trying to give her guidance on things, that I think continually reinforces that. And we still have moments where she doesn't want to hear it. I think teenagers just instinctually are like, I know, you don't know. Like there's
Yeah.
always an element of that. Like I don't want to hear it from my parents. I can figure this out or whatever. But that I think is the code, is to continue to be consistent.
Yeah, I continue showing up and, look, some of that is instinctual for some people. Some of that is not so instinctual, and that's okay
Yeah.
too. If you have it uh front and center that you want to show up, then that is the intention. And then what follows the intention is action. And however that might be, even if it doesn't come naturally to you, you can make that effort. And I also want to take this opportunity to mention again how important it is to look for support and look for strategies and tools and whatever, from other people because it's a constant. It is a constant learning. This is like it's parenting on purpose. It is proactive. And I mean, man, if I did an episode on just parenting failures that we have had, that I mean, that would take up
Yeah.
like a month of, just 1 hour episodes every day
Yeah.
because we have them all the time. But my point is that the things that I have learned not because I just know them. I'm literally reading the books or I'm like asking friends. We have our good friends, Kim and Mike, they have 3 girls. She's a wonderful parent. I ask her about stuff. She asks me stuff and I ask her stuff. So just leaning on each other and going just taking that next step of being okay with not knowing because none of us are born knowing any of this stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and every child is different, like
Yeah.
we're all different
Yes.
combinations of chromosomes that and different nature and nurture and there's a lot of things that go into the pot and who knows your kid better than you. So you have to follow your instinct. And one of the things that you're very good at doing is instinctually you have that motherly instinct that has and listen, I think I have a fatherly instinct, but you, you got to listen to yourself. You know your child better than anybody else. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, especially younger parents, like parents of younger children. I mean, that's part of the beauty, through all the phases like that she's gone through. They all have their pluses and minuses. Um, and navigating them it changes over time,
Yeah.
based on your child, but navigating each one of those phases is a little bit different, and you have to grow with your child. I
But
think
what about our relationship, right? Like, what about the relationship? What do you think what would you say rather are the things that no one tells you about what happens when you have a kid? I mean, I know for me, for example, the biggest struggle that I have had with our relationship during certain times is the rut, right? Like getting into the rut of like all we talk about is logistics. And and I think that was more prevalent when both of us were going at 100 miles an hour and we're both growing our business and we're both trying to be, present parents. I don't know. I can't do all of that. It's the one thing that I've realized, at least for us,
yeah,
that both of us going at 100 miles per hour professionally just does not pan out well. And that's one of the discussions that we had recently. We moved, first of all, we moved to a place where we're not in the city anymore. We have a lot more distance between us and like
everything.
everything. So everything is planned, everything is in a car. And we did not expect that moving here to a place where now things are not walking distance anymore was going to impact our lives the way that it did. And I'm talking about even on the professional realm,
Hmm.
because I had to make a change in my business between you and I. We had to have the discussion. And it's like, well, between the two of us, your business is going to be the one that is going to uphold most of the finances and this and that, right? Like it was never really going to be equal landing for us if we are going to also parent and do this and do that. That was hard for me to come to terms with because I see myself as an equal in all intents and purposes. But what I wasn't realizing, to be honest, is that I was actually equating myself as an equal more in terms of finances and money and what I can bring in.
You still struggle with that.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
because, it's like I know I can, more, do more. But for me, that was a big thing is not expecting the change that was going to happen when we moved to a place where she could have a different type of life a little bit. We can have like a little bit of a slower life. And then what came with that, which was personally impacting and professionally impacting, not necessarily negatively, I want to say, it just was like this big change. And I had to come to the realization that, hey, you know what? We need to look at the realities. And If you want to do this, you cannot be 100% in every single space. And for someone who does 200% where only 70% is expected, that was freaking hard for me. And I
What
want
was
to
the hardest
know,
element for you? Or do you just sort of blanket the whole situation as hard, but did you find it harder to on the work side or the parenting side?
well, I was experiencing a lot of burnout with work.
Yeah.
So that was hard because I got to a point where I knew I had to close my practice. I didn't want to get to a point where I wasn't going to be serving my clients to the level and the way that I want to serve them. So I was struggling with that. And, um, and so I made the decision to close my practice, and I was fine with that. I was okay with that when that time came because I knew it was the right thing to do. However, when I was then just fully doing all the stuff at home, I was fine with it for a little while. And at a certain point, I started to feel very frustrated because I did feel sometimes like, "What, am I just a gopher here? I'm just a gopher." I started to feel like a gopher. And when I think back at it, what I was actually struggling with is, who am I now?
Mhm.
Is like
That
my
identity.
identity. I absolutely love being a therapist. I loved being in practice. And then I switched to coaching, and I adore being a coach. It's just so right for me. However, our family's needs have changed. Her needs have changed. She's in a lot of sports and in a lot of this and a lot of that. And
Yeah.
so I realized that I wanted to, just like when she was born, I actually want to be here for these things. I didn't expect that I was going to struggle. I didn't expect that I was going to have a professional identity crisis. I was having a mother identity crisis because that is very natural to me. But I felt resentment sometimes also at having to always be the one to get in the car and do everything. So you weren't
Despite us
wrong.
even talking about that.
Yeah.
Like
And
it's
agreeing. And I
yeah, and
totally
agreeing
agree.
like, okay, and as much as you had resented it also was uncomfortable. It's still uncomfortable for me to say no, to be like, I can't do it. Like, you know, so a defined role doesn't even if you define the role, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to feel right. It's
Yeah.
always going to feel good, right? Or
Yes.
there's not going to be conflicting emotions around it. And we still have it, and we try to navigate. I try to, jump in more when I can, and only say no if I really can't do something.
What about you? Is there anything that you feel has gotten better or that you weren't expecting to change or and then that now has in that arena?
Well, I think the interesting thing is for me is that now that again we only have the one daughter,
Yeah.
and now that she's rounding out junior year in high school, and college is in sight, and and the realization that she is going to be out of the nest soon has made me sort of shuffle things in my head where I'm like, I want to grab onto every moment that I can with her. Like, even though it's technically a work day and but she doesn't have school and like taking advantage of that year and a half, the next year and a half is going to go by like that.
Yeah.
And so I want to savor it as much as I can. I try to grab as many moments as I can with her. And so that's something that's changed as of late as we've started to talk about visiting colleges and stuff.
Oh my gosh, I know.
But with you and I, that's certainly going back to us, our partnership, our relationship. That rut is always a challenge because I think every couple gets into them, and you
Mhm.
got to figure out, you got to kind of got to shake things up here and there and figure out, okay, how do we like inject a little bit of just something different.
Mhm.
And whether it's instituting a date night. And I think we're also very cognizant of in that year and a half, we're empty nesters and like that's going to be a big shakeup for us. But the nice thing I think about having the teenage years, we're both very cognizant of what is coming, which is just, it's just going to be us most of the time at that. Don't make me cry. Don't cry on a podcast. Uh, so I think we're trying to consciously kind of lean into that a little bit. I feel that
Yeah,
anyways, like
yeah, I agree. I feel like we've been doing that. It's
trying to,
interesting. No,
it's
it's an interesting point though, because I think like what you're saying is for me also a very real experience is that you and I have been having more conversations lately about so what are we gonna do? And what do
yeah,
kind of thinking about plans. And I
with
think
excitement
with
too.
excitement, yes, with
Like trying
excitement.
to inject like, okay, yes, is there a tremendous amount of sadness and fear and such with her leaving the nest? Absolutely. But our life is not ending at that moment in time. Like we have to have things to look forward to. We talked about this. Like I'm genuinely excited for that time as well because it does come with it freedom. Like, we get a semblance of that.
Yes, that's exactly how I would describe it. I think for me, by the way, part of my motivation in having those conversations is because I am so scared to death of becoming one of those couples where the kid leaves and then we look at each other and we're like, who are you?
Yeah.
I am so scared of that.
And we've been talking about that for years.
I know.
Like, I mean, get ahead of that. And think about that to
Yeah.
yourself as a parent. Once your kid like hits like 10,
Yeah.
you start to think about like, do we know each other? Are we just fulfilling a role? You mentioned, the rut of just logistics
Yeah.
and moving kids around. And that is a real challenge to stay present in an adult relationship, a marriage, where it does need to transcend the period when all the kids are out of the nest. I mean, that's the goal, right? And I think it's something that we've joked about for a very long time, but we've also communicated about a very healthy amount to be like, to keep it at the forefront. It's great that we have these family moments and, the dynamics that we have right now as a family unit of three. But realistically, that's going to change significantly. And to keep that at the forefront of the mind, I mean, you can only do so much to like mentally and emotionally prepare for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, what would you say is a word of advice around that? What should we do?
I mean, that's loaded.
What are we gonna do?
I think what we're going to do is keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And, I mean, everyone needs purpose. And I think it helps to know that we can create a purpose for us and our lives as we think about becoming empty nesters. When I think about even a year and a half, like that feels too soon, but it is what it is. And it's healthy. It's healthy for her. It's healthy for us. And so I think that's what I would say is to continue to do that and be excited about it, and let the emotions flow as they will. Like there's going to be a mix of sadness with also a mix of excitement. And I think for us, to answer your question, is just keep doing what we're doing. And then as time gets closer to her leaving, I will shift it for sure to being, let's make plans happen.
Mhm.
So right now there's intention. As we get closer to that time, it's going to be, okay, let's put something on the calendar. Let's make it happen. Because it is very easy for you and me to then go into our workspaces. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know, right? We know that about each other.
Yeah.
Like you are very focused in on your work. I am as well. And so I think that's the biggest hurdle that you and I are going to have to make sure that we address.
Get out of my head.
Why, I can read your mind. Anyway,
No, because I was thinking, like, to you, what do you think for us? What do you think is the biggest going to be the hardest or the biggest
is that what
challenge
you were
for
thinking
us?
though?
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, because I know what mine is, what my fear is, or what I think our biggest challenge will be is being like, okay, we know, our daughter is set up. She's okay.
Good.
Now we can really focus on just working and like just like pushing forward professionally because we love what we do
Yeah.
respectively. And so my fear is you doing that too much as it is like I fear for myself to do it too much. But I think that's very important for us to keep in check. And I think that's probably a realistic concern for most empty nesters, regardless of who's the one that's running the kids around and the one that's maybe focused more on going into an office or working or whatever, is filling that void with work rather than focusing it inward on the relationship. I think it's an ongoing process and an ever present challenge
Mhm.
and need in a long term partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm glad to know that that is something that you think about also, because if we're conscious of it and we're aware of it, that means that we are going to have it top of mind. I have to say, it does give me a lot of comfort to know that we are, that we know each other in that way so well, and that it's something that we know we have to kind of check each other on, because
Yeah.
that's the way it's been worked. All right. So this has been an amazingly real and honest and open conversation, which is one of the things that I love about our conversations. And I'm so grateful that you have decided to join me and do this so that we can share with whoever is willing to
Whoever
listen to
really
us
wants to
talk.
listen to us talk. Yeah.
So this brings me to the last question that came up, which was, if we could go back and talk to ourselves as new parents, what pearls of wisdom would we share with our younger parent selves?
I would say, you know, that I've struggled with this and with work, etc., is being present sometimes. And that, uh, say, be in the moment, stop to smell the roses with your kids, try to collect as many memories as you can, and really, you can always work. And nobody's laying on their deathbed and saying, "Oh, I just wish I would have worked, a little bit more to, whatever." That is a very real statement and a very pertinent statement when you have children. You want to spend time with them. And, the other thing, which we didn't even really touch on too much, but unfortunately, I've lost both my parents in the last few years. And one of the things that I wish I um, would have done more with them is I wish I would have known them more.
Hmm.
Um,
I mean, but you're very close with your parents.
I know that, but like it's like the little things. It's like only at the tail end of my dad's life did I learn that he like really loved live music. And like I didn't really see that too much. And part of it is, I mean, you're kids and you're not like, you're not focused on it. But I think showing your kids who you are as a
Yeah.
person, not just as a father or a mother, obviously with at appropriate times, etc., but sharing, whether it's sharing memories or mistakes that you made or whatever. But I think that's more prevalent with me in terms of showing your kids who you are, letting them know, especially as they get older into their teenage years, like get to know you a little bit better as a person and not as a mother or father, is prevalent to me because now I don't have my mother or father.
Right.
And I think you always think, you know what, as I get older, that's when that will come into play and stuff. And I'm already seeing it with with our daughter that like at 16 years old, I I like to do that
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
I don't want her to not really know who I am until later on in
Yeah.
life and just be the father. But it's always a tricky thing because you're not your kid's best friend. You're still a parent.
Right. Yeah.
So it's always a delicate balance. And I think I'm tainted because I've lost both my parents already, that it makes it a little bit more prevalent in my mind. There's a lot of other stuff that needs to be accomplished in life because life is hard. Expenses are high,
Mhm.
always, relatively speaking. And you have to work and you have to dedicate time to your spouse, whoever that partner is, if you have one. You have to dedicate time to parents, aging parents. So you got to give yourself some grace. And I think I beat myself up over time at certain times, especially when feel like I've worked too much and didn't get to spend time. But it's that being present and the quality of time that you have with your kids that, you know, they're only this age once.
Yeah. No, I
How
mean,
about you?
um, I think for me, what I would say is if I could go back and tell myself something
Hmm.
as a new parent, I think what I would say is I would tell myself that your feelings are completely valid. It's totally natural and normal for you to want to just be a mom and not anything else. And the best gift that you can give your kid is being present and letting her know that in those moments when she's with you, nothing else matters. And that's what I would do. I would go back and give myself that nugget of wisdom because if I had somebody, I think that had given me that permission, and you did in many ways, but I'm talking about like,
If you would have
a
given yourself permission.
yeah, myself,
Yeah.
or had a parental figure, somebody that
Yeah.
was part of making me who I was, right? Like, or part of shifting or shaping, I should say, that identity. If on some level I had gotten that type of quote unquote permission, I wouldn't have been so hard on myself. I don't think I would have struggled as much to feel the need to produce and be and this and that versus just being okay wanting to be a mom and that's it.
Do you say that because you think now, maybe looking back at things, you wouldn't have gone to school? You wouldn't have, like, as early on?
Ah,
Do you think, like, because you did give yourself permission when you went back to work and when you decided, okay, I really want to I want to be a mom and I want to be home with our daughter. And so you did give yourself permission at that moment in time. Do you feel like that permission ran out? Like, where you kind of only allowed yourself that for so long?
no, no, it's not that. I don't know that my trajectory would have changed, but I wouldn't have been so hard on myself.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
the difference
Yeah.
is I
You
would
still beat yourself up over it a little bit, even though
sometimes, yeah,
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
So I would have been much softer
Despite my efforts. I
despite my
know.
efforts. I
God, I
know
tried.
you did try
I did.
like hell,
I
but
really did.
it's deep. It's deep and it's
And
complicated.
now I have a bunch of feelings about
Oh God.
that. We're gonna have to
Well,
do another episode.
I think so. Or maybe you should talk to a therapist. Not this one
That's
though. Okay, so with that, I want to thank you once again, Jonathan, my
number
most
2.
my most favorite co-host,
Mhm.
coming on our special edition Couples Corner. And I hope you had fun. I
I did
did.
have fun. Yeah, it's always, despite all of our communications, uh, we still can learn about one another, and it's interesting to go back in time and think about where we were at what time and
I
how that
know.
made us feel, and look at it from the lens of where we're at now.
No, it's great. And I agree with you. I'm always surprised at the little nuggets of information that we that we're still learning from each other, even from just having these talks for the podcast. So,
Yeah.
and well, thank you all for being here today. If this episode resonated with you, if you feel that there's somebody that could benefit from hearing it, please go ahead and share it. Oh, I encourage you to write a review because that will help to spread the conversation. And until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and stay emotionally wealthy. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Oh, hey, quick reminder for you that this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Always consult a qualified professional with any questions you might have.